Bird on Bears fans, Breeze Nation, what's good? Question on the table today: is the best scenario for the Chicago Bears trading back not once, but twice in this year's 2023 NFL Draft? Let's talk about it, starting now. Now, if you are new to the channel, please like the video. Please subscribe to the page. We do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel. It's the only channel talking Chicago sports, how Chicago talks. So make sure that you get in tune with us, man. Listen, right? So there is a ton of speculation on what the Chicago Bears should do, right? And I mean, there has been a ton of different opinions on what they should actually do with the first pick, how they should actually move the first pick, which team they should trade to, different scenarios, all of that, right? But the 33rd team, which is basically a platform, a website, whatever you may call it, run by former GMs, former players, different things like that, had an interesting take on this. And I've heard Bears fans, you guys in the comments have mentioned this a couple of times, but I just want to get it on here and talk about it, right? I've heard this talk about the possibility of the Chicago Bears not trading back once, right? Because I think already you're getting a slew of picks. But the fact that there's so many teams in this in this NFL draft this year that need quarterbacks, and the fact that there are multiple quarterbacks there, I think that there might actually be some opportunity. This 33rd team broke down a trade that would send your first overall pick. Now, here's the one thing about this caveat on all of this, right? And we'll have to break this down during the video, kind of what we will be looking for to get from each team, because they did not provide what the draft capital would be. They basically just said they would give a bevy of picks, which, by the way, what is the measurement of a bevy, bro? I keep hearing this word. I've never heard bevy thrown out so much in my life. What exactly is a bevy? How do you measure a bevy? Somebody let me know in the comments, man. But the 33rd team proposed that the Bears come away. They trade the number one pick to the Texans, who would then trade Bryce Young. And then with the second pick in the draft, who would then draft Bryce Young. And then with the second pick in the draft, they would trade back with the Colts again. And apparently the Colts take C.J. Stroud in this situation, although we've heard a lot of talk that they're very interested in Will Levis. At a minimum, we know that they want one of these top quarterbacks in the draft. And even after getting two trades, the Bears come away with the number 4 pick in the draft. And with that pick, they draft Will Anderson and or Jalen Carter, depending on how that falls out. They did have them drafting Will Anderson on the 33rd team. And I think here's the big thing about it, right? Like, it depends on what each team is talking about. If one team literally is giving you an offer that literally just blows you away, right? Like, say what the Texans are offering for the first pick in the draft isn't enough for you, right? I would say don't do it in that situation. And what I'm saying is, right, like, if the Texans have this understanding that we're not going to give you multiple years of draft picks. We're not going to give you, or I shouldn't say multiple years, but we're not going to give you a ton of picks for multiple years for the first pick in the draft. Then I think I might be looking at the Texans like, well, listen, then you're not going to have the first pick in the draft, right? Because there's other teams that want this pick. You can sit at 2 and maybe you don't get your guy. Maybe you do. That's the chance that you're willing to take. But that it also is dependent on if the Texans want to move up to that pick. But the one thing that I will say is this: if the Texans are looking to give the draft capital, there's not really a player on the Texans I really want that they could give me, right? Like, I don't look at anybody on that team and I'm like, man, I gotta have him. I like Brandon Cooks. I think he's a really nice wide receiver. That wouldn't equal out the trade compensation for me in the trade, right? Like, there'd have to be a ton of picks, and maybe you throw Brandon Cooks in there as well. But I just don't look at Houston as sending an offer that's going to blow the Bears off the table, because at the end of the day, Houston's basically guaranteed to get a quarterback. And I think at this point, right, with how this organization is moving, with what they right now, right, they're a garbage organization. They're in flux. They fire Lovie Smith after a year. He has no opportunity to establish anything there. You've got these young guys developing with Lovie. They've learned all of this stuff defensively, and they've played hard for Lovie Smith, and instantly you get rid of them, right? So now the real question is Houston even sitting there offering you something major to move up that one spot to go take a guy? Because they might just be going to get anything. I think you might even see Houston, like, I mean, really, right? Like, just sit there and even try to trade down themselves because they realize they're in such a hole with how bad this team is. But that's really the first thing, right? Like, what is Houston going to actually do? How are they actually going to try and make this pick? Are they actually going to try to move up? If they're willing to play ball with you, I would love to move down and talk with the Houston Texans, right? But here's the caveat to me. It all depends on what the Indianapolis Colts are willing to send you. If they're not willing to send you the same capital that they are for the first pick, for the second pick, which, right, like maybe missing out on a couple picks here and there, I could live with that, right? Because in this situation, in this scenario, Bears come away with a ton of draft capital from Houston, a ton of draft capital from the Colts. You've doubled your draft capital, basically, probably even replacing some of your high draft picks. For me, if I'm looking at Houston, I'm saying, hey, not only do I want your second pick in the draft this year, but I also want your second round pick for this year. I also want your first round pick for next year. You know, and you build off of that, right? I want to replace that second round pick that we traded away for Chase Claypool. Not to say that it's going to be bad, but, you know, you're able to replenish that pick. And now you're not sitting here and just like, oh my God, we gave up this pick for Chase Claypool. Claypool can come in, he can operate fine because Ryan Poles has revitalized the capital that he has in that position. On the flip side of that, right, like it also, like I was saying, with what Houston's offering, it also depends on what the Colts are offering. Because I think you have a Colts team right now, or the Colts right now, who are looking at this and saying, yeah, we want to move up to get Will Levis. We want to move up and find our quarterback of the future, and we believe it's going to be him and or C.J. Stroud. We're willing to offer you some really nice capital. We're willing to offer you some really nice players here, right? And I think that that's a situation where the Bears put themselves in a position now where you have to say, yes, can we get this from Houston and from the Colts? But also, is the value we're getting for the first pick in the NFL draft, a pick that everyone is coveting right now, worth just not just taking the package that the Colts may be looking to offer in that situation? I know some people have come out and they've said that the original offer that David Kaplan was talking about was cap, essentially. But I mean, I will say this: at the end of the day, I don't even think that was too much to offer. There's some people that said it wasn't enough to offer. It depends on who the second player is. But and if you haven't seen that video, we did drop a video on the Colts news breaking of them trading a bevy of picks. That word bevy again coming up, a bevy of picks to the Chicago Bears and a couple of players, right? But I think that's how you have to really weigh this thing out. It's not just, oh yeah, I get to trade with you and trade with you. It's about what's the best package, what's the best offer that you're going to get to give up the first pick in the draft. And if there's a team that's willing to come in here and offer you more draft capital, offer you better players, offer you better opportunity for you to go out there and move down a couple of picks, then yeah, especially moving at 4, right? Because you're still getting a really great player at 4. I do want to know how you guys feel, by the way, man. Let me know in the comments below. I'll be down there talking with you as well. Y'all know how we get the conversation in the comments, man. Appreciate you guys for showing love to the channel. You're still in a really, really good position to get a top player as well. I mean, like, you're still talking about Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, 2 guys that we were talking about, right? Like, as, hey, if the Bears stay at the first pick, what if they just take Jalen Carter or Will Anderson? Like, would you be mad at that? Like, and I haven't done the tape breakdown. We'll be doing that over on the playback side. And we'll also drop a video over here on YouTube as well. But I haven't done the tape breakdown on Will Anderson and Jalen Carter yet, but I think the big thing to me is that you know that those guys are at least top 5 players in this draft, no matter what. Maybe they're not the first pick in the draft, but they're top 5 players in this draft, no matter what. And you still put yourself in an opportunity to go out there and get one of those. Now, I don't know if I love the fact that at the end of the day, you're building up the draft capital. You're building up as much as you can. I think the Bears will be able to replace their second-round pick that they did end up giving up for Chase Claypool. The Ravens pick is going to be a little bit higher. I believe it's going to be 53 instead of 54. So it moved up a little bit because of their loss in the playoffs, right? I think now, right, like you still go into this with 2 second-round picks in this situation. I think we're going to be in that situation no matter what this season, or you're going to have a slew of picks in the 3rd round. Definition of a slew, right? I know everybody coming back at me on that one now. But the thing is, right, like you can't just give up this pick for anything. Yes, you do still have an opportunity to pick a really good player, but you can't just say, well, I can trade with them, get some picks, trade with them, get some picks, and that's how this is going to work out, and I'm going to get all the picks. What if the Colts will give you the same value on picks for more years, than the Texans will for the first pick, and they're willing to give you players, right? So I think that's kind of the game the Bears have to play here. I think that's how they have to figure this out, what's going to be the best case scenario for them, because at the end of the day, right, like, you cannot look back on this deal no matter what. And I do think the Bears will trade. I don't think that they're going to end up selecting anybody, but you can't look back on this deal and feel like I didn't get enough. And there's still going to be people that are like, you didn't get enough for the first overall pick. There is a limit to what you can get, by the way. There is a limit to what the Bears are going to get for the first overall pick in the draft. But you can't look back at this pick, especially now knowing that you have a quarterback, and come out of this draft and say, wow, we really got fleeced on that. We really got we got sold on that deal. I don't want to come out of this deal and have one of those moments where, not to say that you're looking at the draft and you're saying we didn't get the right guy, because that can happen anywhere, right? Like, there's a lot of people that feel like Kyler Gordon wasn't the right guy, but Kyler Gordon showed a ton of improvement during the season, right? I still would have went and got George Pickens, but Kyler Gordon did not underperform by the end of the season. Jaquan Brisker looks great, right? Like, so there's prospects all the time, and there's people that went ahead of them that you look at and you be like, oh yeah, I'm glad we got him there, right? So you can look at the draft all the time and say, oh, that's not the move, that's not the guy we should have got, that's not the play we should have. Of course that happens, because guys sometimes don't live up to their draft style. More times than not, don't live up to where they're drafted. But I think the thing is here that we can't come away feeling like, well, we'll see how this goes. We have to know that something, for getting the first pick and giving up the first pick in the draft, for giving up the first pick in the draft, you have to know that something that you put out there, something that you put on the in the trademark is going to work, right? If it's bringing back Michael Pittman, bringing back DeForest Buckner, bringing back whatever it is, right? Whatever player you can get, or whatever, Brandon Cooks, you have to know that you have something out of this trade that's going to help you next season. So for me, this isn't one of those moments where we can sit there right in the draft day and say, well, we'll wait and see, because they're second round pick. This is a first pick in the draft, in a draft that everybody wants these guys. It's not like there's not people wanting Bryce Young. It's not like there's not people wanting C.J. Stroud. It's not like there's not people wanting, although really just mostly the Colts, Will Levis, right? We see these guys. Teams are literally coming out and just like, we're trying to move up to get them. We don't have a quarterback. We're assessing the situation. We're trying to move up to get them. And so you have to come out of this with a John Lynch 49ers type deal. You can't come out of this with the, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that trade, bro. I don't know. I don't like that trade. That's not what he, and like I said, there are people that will. There are people that will look down on whatever trade Ryan Poles makes. There are people that did I say Pace earlier? Y'all know I'd be doing that. There are people that will look down on whatever move Ryan Poles makes, and they're gonna say, this isn't the move. I can't believe the Bears did it, blah, 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 right? Like, that's just going to happen. That's natural in this game. But at the end of the day, the big thing that you cannot do is, we're just looking at this and you're like, none of that was worth it. None of that was worth the hype of having the first pick in the draft. You know what I'm saying? So that's my take on it, man. I would love to see the Bears trade back. As far as what you would get from the Colts, I don't know, dog. Like, it's one of those things to me where I think you would still get something. I'm be real with you. I think you could get something similar to what David Kaplan reported. I know a lot of people are like, that's not facts. He didn't know. That's not how it's going down, blah, blah, blah. I think you can get something similar to that. It's the first pick in the draft. There's people competing for it, and the Colts have put themselves on Front Street. But I do think you have to consider the double trade back. I just don't think that it's a, oh my God, conclusion that you have to do it no matter what, right? You got to get something great from the Texans. And then on the flip side, when you have that second pick in the draft, still get something really freaking good from the Colts, because they still want their guy. And there's so many factors that go into this. It all depends on, right, if they feel like he might not be there at 3, if they feel like, right, like, somebody's going to trade up to 3 or trade up to 2 and try and take their guy. Those are the games Ryan Poles has to play. Those are the games Ryan Poles has to play. So hopefully he plays them well, man. I want to know how you guys feel, though. Let me know in the comments below. I'll be down there talking with you as well. As always, man, it's your boy, Pat the Designer, back at it again to continue watching our Chicago Bears content. Please click the links on the screen or check the links in the description below. I hope y'all stay safe out there in Chicago. Have a great Friday. Peace.